But Lee, the great hero, could not have lost Gettysburg unless some human error led to the failure of the Confederate Army. Therefore, Lee was a hero, there must be a villain. Well, it's easy to find the villain. First of all, he has to be not a Virginian. General Longstreet of Georgia actually practically volunteered for the job. He put a target on his chest. He said, yeah, I'll be the villain. First of all, after the war, Longstreet had an unfortunate knack for including Robert E. Lee among those who should bear the responsibility for wartime failures, particularly at Gettysburg. Modern historians would probably tend to agree with that assessment. Longstreet did more than that, however, to alienate his countrymen. He committed the dual sins of becoming A, a Republican, and B, a Roman Catholic after the war. Well, people in Richmond were probably thinking, hey, what's next, herpes? I mean, this is the worst. Then he campaigned for Grant in 1868. Now, there's a reason for that. His first wife, who died during the war of scarlet fever, his first wife was a first cousin of Julia Dent, who became Julia Grant. So he looked for a job and a place to make some money, and he went with the Republican Party. He campaigned for Grant. He accepted Grant's nomination to the federal post as surveyor of the port of New Orleans, and in 1969 he became ambassador to Turkey. These, of course, were sinecures or rewards handed out to Republicans. But to the impoverished and jobless Southern Democrats, Longstreet had suddenly joined the enemy. He had become what they called a scallywag, a traitor. At the Confederate Veterans in Birmingham in 1895, Longstreet rose to speak, and they booed him off the stage. Pathetic end for a man whom Lee called my old war horse. He was blamed for losing the war. Actually, I think George Pickett, for whom the famous charge is named, gave a pretty good summary. He came back to Gettysburg a couple of years after the war, and somebody asked him on the visit to the battlefield why he felt that the South had lost. He said, I have always thought that the Yankees had something to do with it. Pretty good answer. Actually, the South did a remarkable, efficient job of rebuilding. After the war, the railroads were up and running within a year, and cities like Birmingham, Alabama became a big steel city. Atlanta became a big railroad hub. They did a lot to rebuild after the war. And to the great credit of men and women on both sides, the animus, the smoldering hatred present during the war, had dissipated essentially within the first decade after the war. Oh, there were, I suppose, the jokes. I had a classmate in college who told me he was from Ohio, and he was sent for his basic training down to Camp Polk, Louisiana. And he said that natives didn't talk to him much. He's sitting in a bar one afternoon, and he says to the bartender, he says, where do the Yankees hang out here? Bartender points out the window. He says, try that tree. But generally, it was not as bad as it could have been. It was not as bad as, for example, it was up to in recent years between the factions in Northern Ireland, or to say nothing of the Middle East animus. And the grudging hatred between Serbians and Bosnians just doesn't quit. That goes all the way back to the Battle of Kosovo in 1388. So some guys do carry a grudge a long time. Between North and South, they did not. In the South itself, the immigration of millions of Northerners from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt during the past 25 years has done much to alter the character of that region. Perhaps the old adage, written and spoken by Southerners after the war, hang on to your Confederate money because the South's going to rise again. Now, if I could do the rebel yell, I would do that now. The South's going to rise again. Perhaps that has actually taken place in our own lifetime, and we hardly noticed it.